welcome everybody here today. As Matt said, I'm Gabor Gulyás. I will probably spare you the personal introduction and going through my background and history. You can just go on LinkedIn and probably find 100 people with my name, with some luck even the profile that actually belongs to me. I'm here to talk to you about innovation in BIM education, and as Matt, just to elaborate a bit more on what Matt said, I think if you're on this call, you're probably aware of how interesting times we are living through with BIM becoming sort of mainstream and the industry demanding more and more model-based technologies to be implemented on actual projects. But the resource pool does not really pick up with that or keep pace with that demand. And I think we are getting into a more and more resource poor stage. I think when, as an employer, I know how hard it is to find suitably qualified people. So we try to help that with actually finding our own talent through educational programs, and I will talk a little bit about that. I will run a fairly simple agenda. The introduction I will limit to the two organizations that I'm working for primarily. I'm the operations manager of digital engineering at DBM Workon, which is an engineering consulting company. And I'm lecturing the continuous improvement subject at Bond University and was instrumental in building that program, and I will talk about that as well. Then I will dive into the BIM Masters program a little bit more, and then talk about data in BIM education in general and the importance of information in BIM education. DBM Workon, I will just introduce through a couple of interesting projects that we are working on. Accidentally, they are all the Office enabled projects as well. The first one is Queen's Wharf. It's a mixed-use development project in Brisbane. It's with a $3.6 billion budget. It's well into construction now. We are working on that project since 2015, and it's a very, very exciting project where the Office played a role since about middle of the design phase, and is now driving the product selection and procurement processes for FF&E primarily. Brisbane Metro is about $1 million in budget. It's an underground, well, including underground routes. It's an electric bus line, the first one in Australia actually. So it's again another very exciting project in an urban context with some infrastructural and also like vertical construction scopes in it, and it has the Office implemented as well, which is right now in a sort of the early stages, room data sheets and defining requirements and briefing the more advanced stages of the design. And the third one is the QUT, Queensland University of Technology Health Futures Precinct project, where again design is in schematic design now, and we are just trying to brief the next stages, and the Office plays an essential role in that one as well. We are working on these projects on the client side. We normally advise large-scale asset owner-operators in both private and government sector, which provides some interesting opportunities in work. In terms of our relationships with education, I would lie if I said that I started the first cadet program. It would be a big fat lie, because the program exists at DBM Workon since 1964. So I'm actually fortunate enough to work with people at DBM Workon who started as cadets but work for the company for more than 40 years, which is pretty unique in the 21st century, I think. Beyond the cadet programs, we participate in curriculum development and guest lecture at various universities. QUT, Bond, Curtin, Uni of Western Australia as well. We started the capstone through industry placement program as well, which I will talk to you about at Bond. We also organize events like hackathons, workshops, competitions for students which is obviously a great forum to find wonderful talent and actually offer them positions at the company as well. And we are building research partnerships as well with universities. Uni of South Australia is not on the map here, but we are just working with them to support a research program that's running there. So from the other angle, Bond University is a small university which is Australia's first private non-profit, and it is also the highest ranking for student experience. If you just put it in Google Maps, that is a bit of a hint for the reasons. One of the reasons why it's very popular. It's on the Gold Coast with beautiful sandy beaches, about 3,000 hours of sunshine a year. But I think the other component to student experience is that it has a very high. It prides itself to have a very high lecturer to student ratio, and it is very important when you consider building a program for a BIM education, which is best delivered in a very hands-on fashion, very practical, pragmatic fashion. It's great to work with 6 to 12 students. I had the experience to sort of lecture groups of 100, 120 students at once, and it's a very different experience with very little feedback, and it's a lot of talking, not really a two-way communication, which is normally my preference. The campus looks awesome as well. If you've never been there, jacarandas are just blooming now, so it looks approximately how it looks on the picture on the left-hand side currently. The BIM Masters program is a relatively young one that we started to build at the Bond about 3 years ago. It has a very modular structure, which I will talk about a bit more, which is tailored to a future potential industry intake as well, which would offer the modules separately, not necessarily in a complete master's program. If you're just interested in one of them, you could potentially take them in the future. It's delivered in intensives, which is also tailored to people coming from industry for both lecturing and as students. It's much easier to deliver it this way, or to get away from your day-to-day work to deliver something like that, or to attend one of the modules or the entire program if it's in intensives. Intensives mean that we have 3-day blocks for a subject. It's not spread out across, so if it's like 18 hours, it's not spread out across a semester. It's actually delivered in one 3-day block, which is pretty intensive, but it's actually very helpful in integrating into people's daily lives who are already in the workforce. This is Australia's first and only Building Smart accredited BIM Masters program currently. I think Australasia's first. And I think Bond is very proud of that accreditation. It also means certain principles are followed in the course, which I will again elaborate some more. It's highly practical and interactive, so we try to make it as hands-on as possible, which means it's not easy for the IT department to actually follow what we are doing, because we have heaps of different software installed on the machines in the BIM lab, which need to be maintained and ideally integrated as well. And this program was designed in collaboration with industry. And it is actually a great team who put this program together. I won't go through, so apologies to anyone I missed on this page. I just wanted to highlight a couple of people who actually contributed to the development of the program. David Mitchell, who's actually a board member of Building Smart Australia, also a co-founder of QSX. He has a very strong quantity survey, quantity takeoff background. Toby Maple and Mark Cronin are coming from IMBI, a new consultant group formed by some old faces in the industry. Quentin Cooper, who's the technology person at Cody Parker. Cody Parker is actually the lead architect for Queen's Wharf that I just mentioned as one of the most exciting projects in Brisbane right now. Kwok, who works for automation and knows whatever is worth knowing about data analytics and data dashboarding and all those sort of things. Peter, who is a 4D specialist. Joe Banks, who runs or is part of the Brisbane committee. Brisbane is a local BIM user group in Brisbane that actually hosts local user group conferences. Up to 500 people attend those or attended those before COVID, I would say. And Rosemary is the course coordinator for this, who does the magical job of coordinating everybody's very busy schedules, because all these people work in industry primarily, and coordinates all the course content as well. The actual subjects are delivered in sort of 3 different groups or segments. First, it starts with the micro-credential subjects, which go through a very user-based or use case focused way. So those modules are revolving around certain use cases. There is an intro course laying the foundations for all that, and then if I did not hate the 4D, 5D, 6D, 7D, nth D terminology, I would say those terms, but it's basically revolving around 3D, time, cost, sustainability, FM, big data, and GIS. And then in the next semester, you basically jump into master subjects, which is process reengineering, continuous improvement, which is my child, offsite fabrication with some DFMA processes and managing complexity in construction, which are more holistic approach subjects, I would say. And after that, you have a capstone semester, which if you performed well in the previous 2 semesters, then you have a chance to get an industry placement. So you can actually get out to a company, get involved in a real project, which we just started to facilitate, I think 2 or 3 semesters before. But it's a great program. And if you're not getting there, then you do a research-based traditional capstone project, which is also highly practical. There are a couple of principles that we are sticking to developing and delivering this program. And one of them is that it has a life cycle approach. It's not limited to any stage of the built environment. So it's basically a cradle to grave, end-to-end approach. And it highlights all the roles and responsibilities throughout the asset life cycle, and also highlights the sort of continuous improvement cycles feeding from the capital works delivery back to the sort of information requirements. So the image that I have here is from the ANZ Guide to ISO 19650, which was developed by a group of great experts. It was led by Toby and Mark from the previous slide, and yeah, a couple of us contributed to that. This specific diagram I developed, and I think it's a great open document. You can actually pick it up. All the program, I think the ISO 19650 is weaved into the program quite a bit, promoting information management, the right information management practices in delivery. You've heard that Building Smart actually contributed to the program, accredited the program as well. So you might have guessed that it is an open and independent program. It's not sticking to any vendor-specific tools. We have a software agnostic approach, and we focus very much on interoperability, which is one of the hardest words in this field, and integration as well, and collaborative workflows. And we focus a lot more on processes than on the tools. We'd like to, or in my program, I like to show students as many tools as possible so that they see that a certain task or process can be done various different ways. And last but not least, we promote data-driven solutions. And it's a bit of a cliche in the industry how important the eye is in BIM, and information in general became sort of the core of BIM technologies and BIM processes, I think. And we cover quite a bit from data authoring through interrogation and data schemas, classification systems, to data consolidation and use. And when I started to build my program specifically in the continuous improvement subject, I focused a lot more on data authoring and interrogation. So we had some great data sets that we looked at and sort of interrogated them as if we were BIM managers in the industry. And it's a bit of a struggle to find data sets that we can get approval to share with for educational purposes, but it was a good exercise. And after a while, I actually identified that it would be great if we had a bit more and we could actually show students how to push and pull data between models and databases, and how to consolidate data, because federation is an important concept in BIM in general, but the same concept applied across data is very important as well. So that's when I decided to actually integrate the Office in the curriculum, and asked for some help and educational databases from the Office people, and they very openly helped me with that, and also with some training material that I could reuse, recycle. So an important concept there is validation of the data, and one of the first things that I tell my students is the very nature of knowledge changed a lot. In recent years, it's not that important anymore with internet and big data and much more access to data to have sort of a lexical knowledge in your head. It's much more important to be able to validate data, verify data, and make sure that the right information gets to the right people at the right time. And finding out what the right information is and validating information is a very important concept that they need to get familiar with. And the Office also ties in well with the overall concept. We saw that sort of life cycle diagram on a previous slide. The Office has its own, and it actually offers solutions from the very beginning, from spatial programming. Basically, it's a great briefing tool, as probably most of you know. So it basically can start without models, just back briefing the design in the concept phase, then goes through all the phases until basically NFM handover. And there are a few organizations, like all the airports in Norway, who use the Office as a master database, actually in FM in operations as well. So it covers the same concept applies to the Office. It can be rolled out across a portfolio that covers the life cycle of build assets. We have a developing data set at one of the campus buildings, which, like this one, is the Abedian School of Architecture building right next to the building that we use for the BIM course, which is a sustainability building. We have these two buildings, a sustainability building and the Abedian building, in a model-based format from the campus, and there are plans to develop a more comprehensive data set for education. I think I touched on how difficult it is, or it can be, to find the right data sets for hands-on training in education. We need to get ideally live data sets from live projects, and have to get marketing authorization to be able to use them in education, to share them with students. And that's not always easy. It's obviously much easier if the university owns their own models, own data sets, and allows students to use that. It also is very relevant to the students. They can just look around and find assets that they find in the model as well as in the real environment around them, which is great. We try to pitch sort of maturity levels, or talk about maturity levels in information use. Yeah, it's sort of my journey. went along the same lines. When I started to develop my course, it mainly revolved around gathering and storing information and how to clean and structure it, and more around authoring and interrogation. And then I went into sort of the DeRolfus territory, which is describing the information, diagnosing the information, and that is what needs to happen to actually lead to sort of digital twin-like use cases when we have, for example, predictive maintenance that is supported by live data feeds back into models and those sort of use cases. So the program itself started in 2018 when the content was developed by all those industry professionals. Then the program was launched in 2019. I have included DeRolfus in 2020, and we started the industry placement in early this year. These are all, I think, sort of important milestones in the development of the program. The first PhDs that are revolving around BIM just started this September, so last month essentially. There is an intake of 3 PhD students who work on various topics: digital twins, laser scanning, data capture integrated into processes, heritage BIM, and some interesting use cases there. We have a plan to integrate BIM data sets. There are new Capital Works projects on campus, and some development going on around data capture of existing assets as well, and developing a more comprehensive data set that we can use for education. There is a plan to offer a more modularized program, which is you don't need to enroll into the entire masters if your interest is only in 4D scheduling. You can, in theory, in the future, choose that. So hopefully we can roll something like that out next year. And yeah, there's a stretch goal around world domination, but we'll talk about that later. So that's basically all that I wanted to cover. I hope it was not too high level and elementary. There are a couple of takeaways that I would like to reinforce for those specifically who come with an interest to develop a similar program or to enroll in this program. The team is probably the number one. I think we have a great bunch of industry professionals. I mentioned some names. I think they actually don't really need too much introduction around here in Australia, but for the rest of the world, anyone logging in from Europe or US or wherever, I would like to reinforce that all those people are world famous in Brisbane. Okay, so they are great professionals who added a lot to the quality content that we have. And content is the second one, which refers to content that we develop for the course, but also refers to content that we have coming from elsewhere, ideally lots of live examples. As the course is delivered mainly by industry professionals, we do have a lot of live content, case studies that we bring to the table, so that students actually see real life examples of how it is done in practice. We try to make it very, very, very hands-on with lots of like practical exercise to reinforce the theory that we are teaching. And it's important in a field like this to continuously improve the program as well. So it's unfortunate for all the lecturers, but technology changes so fast that that we need to amend our program quite often. Or speaking from experience, we need to update certain things quite often. And that was it.